air, water, earth, fire. For hundreds of years, the four nations have lived in harmony. The Avatar, master of all four elements, was always responsible for maintaining the peace. But Avatar Roku passed away 13 years ago. Now, the four nations look to the air nomads to reveal the next Avatar, but the world is met with silence. Rumors from the Earth Kingdom abound that the Fire Nation is planning an aggressive move into the Earth Kingdom. 5 young heroes were too late to save the Southern Air Temple, but they hold vital information that could save the Earth Kingdom and maybe even save the world.
Hello, and welcome to the second episode of Behind the Bison. Last week, we started this little mini interseason series, just exploring our first season of the Flying Bison Podcast. And oh, was it fun. Did you guys have fun?
I had a moderate amount of fun.
Yeah, it was all right.
I had a non-zero amount of fun.
Yeah, it was more than none, but it was less than a million.
Yeah, a million fun is so much fun.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's high density
That leaves
fun.
a lot of room for interpretation. I appreciate that. I can just imagine whatever number I want now. But yeah, so last week we covered basically the first half of the season. Like I said last week, everything leading up to that pivotal moment at the Fortress of Ash. And this week, today, we're going to be talking about everything that happened after that.
Yes.
The return to Omashu after that, the tragedy of the Fortress of Ash, and the journey, the last half of the journey to Ba Sing Se, and all the crazy things that happened there. Are you guys ready for that?
Yeah, it did get crazier, didn't it? I feel like Justin did a good job just ramping everything constantly until we all kind of needed therapy. But
it's my superpower.
It is.
I definitely need therapy after being in this podcast, Justin. Thank you for that.
That's good. That's one of my personal GM goals, like Magpie in Avatar Legends. It says like these are the things you should try and hit every episode. And for me, it's like I want them to have to go to a therapist after.
That is so enheartening. I love that.
Yeah. Yes.
There's a couple things I want to talk about considering the whole return to Omashu after what happened at the Fortress of Ash. But until Nick gets here, let's talk about our first new character introduction, because we had our first character death, that horrible moment, Osa falling. Oh no. And from that, we had our first a new character introduction, the introduction of Shoban or Gemi at the time. Yeah, no, all of my Google Docs just went like blank in their loading.
Oh no. Okay, well while it's coming up, Johnny, I'm curious, like, because we created all of our characters together and recorded us doing that. I'm curious, like, what the process was for you having to do that by yourself, and like thinking about how does this person like interact with the group? How do they like fit in?
Yeah, I think it was interesting. I mean, I spent a lot of time kind of just thinking about what was Osa's relationship with all of the different other characters, and how could I make Shoban different in certain ways, and how could I make him potentially and make things about him intentional to connect with some other characters, and maybe make him a foil for others and things like that. And making Shoban alone, it was an interesting process. It was very different from making him with everybody else. But I spent a lot of time thinking about what I would have done if I was with everybody else making him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that does. That is really interesting. No, Caleb, you asked if we recorded the process of Johnny making Shoban, and no, Johnny and I were just texting about it.
It was all secret.
Yeah, and I will say, I mean, this kind of even answers another question I think somebody asked. I wasn't even originally planning on having Gemi be like brainwashed and become Shoban. That came out of conversations with me and Justin. That was like a progression of things. That wasn't the initial plan.
What? How? I'm trying to remember who came up with the idea first.
I think it was you. Because I had the idea for Uncle Simu and some of the stuff kind of with his relationship with Uncle Simu. And then you were like, well, what if this is why they have this strained relationship?
Yes, that was it. Yeah. I was like, I know I didn't just come up with that out of the blue. Like, there's something you and I were talking about that I was like, oh, what about this? A sort of like as an explanation for that.
Yeah.
And then it just sort of developed into its own thing.
That's epic.
Another thing I wanted to touch on, considering that the whole return to Omashu, that was one of the first like really like intergroup conflicts that we had. It's that conflict between the Launcher brothers. At least it was like one of the heavier ones, one of the first heavier like interpersonal conflicts that we had. So
what were y'all fighting about?
What are we all fighting about? So I guess first a question for Nick. How was that, just playing that out in the moment? Because I know for me personally, I was like, I want to get some fights going. I want to get some juicy angst up in here, and I want to challenge.
So to be clear, and to answer Steve's question, we were fighting because out of nowhere, my brother is like, yeah, I'm just going to drag this unconscious dude around me with me for the foreseeable future. I'm just going to do it. And I was like, well, what? Excuse me? That makes no sense.
It's a pretty foolproof plan.
Haven't we all been there, though? Just dragging around somebody.
It was very reminiscent of a necromancer character I played in the D&D campaign once.
You know, I was thinking about taking Rozak down a necromancy route. You know,
wrong system.
Wrong system. Exactly. No, I remember being really like, what am I? Because I wanted to touch on Dosa not just being Rozak's rival, but also like being like, because he did consider Dosa like his best friend. So I wanted to like kind of show that like mental conflict going on in Rozak's mind. Like I want this person to be nearby just in case, like, you know, we can like force a redemption arc on Dosa. But also but like Rozak thinking I want to force a redemption arc on Dosa.
I was gonna say I do not want to be the next best friend of Rozak. But yeah, I get why you did what you did, you know. I thought that was actually very powerful.
Well, I think it's the reason why, as much as you wanted to, you were like, I want to fight. I was just like, Jay just was not ever going to be like okay with this because it made no sense.
It made no sense,
and it wasn't the kind of like Rozak plan where it was like, this doesn't make sense, but somehow it's just going to work for us. It was just like you're endangering all of us for nothing, not a dang thing. So
yeah, that was probably Rozak's lowest point, wouldn't you say, Danny?
Mm-hmm. Oh no, yeah, definitely. I feel like that's Rozak only had up to move from there. Another really, really interesting thing that we explored in that arc was when Che kind of started learning the crystal bending, which was very, very cool. I believe that was when we explored a new mechanic from the finished rule set, from the finished rule book, the mechanic of actually like training under a mentor. And so yeah, Justin and Nick, how was like basically broadcasting this brand new mechanic that you guys just learned over the podcast? And yeah,
should we give it from the player perspective and then the DM perspective?
Sure, yeah. I want to know what you're thinking.
Yeah, so at first it was very confusing because we didn't have the rules at first, right? Like we didn't have rules for learning, so we were just kind of like playing it, you know, just whatever works. When the rules did come out, we were kind of in a position where it was like, when do we roll for this? Or if I already kind of rolled for it, or but I think it worked out really well. It was very satisfying and obviously very exciting as a player to like have this like cool move that is just for me. So that was all pretty cool. What about you, Justin?
I think I was pretty upfront with you. Like we'll just play this out narratively, and then once the rules come out for like learning this sort of stuff, then we'll kind of go back and reassess and figure out, what do we need to do? Do we need to roll anything? And yeah, I think it ended up being it was still working. That was actually one of the reasons. Not one of the reasons, but that was a big reason why Boomy showed up again in that arc at Full Moon Bay, because I thought, that seems to make sense. Like, Boomy has a grasp on this. He's a very accomplished earthbender, even at his young age. He has already said he was going to be on his way to Ba Sing Se, so it's not totally out of the realm of possibility that he would just run into you guys. And so rather than King Malu be your mentor for crystal training, crystal bending, it ended up being Boomy, which I think makes I also liked too, because you guys really connect it with Boomy a lot. So I think there's even some room for, now that Che has that move practiced, he can go to Boomy and we can have Boomy give him a mastery condition, what is Boomy's mastery task?
I am definitely excited.
I don't know. I'm not excited to find out. I'm sure everyone else is. No, I also honorable mention. I feel like we haven't mentioned that Justin homebrewed that move. Justin original. I don't know if that was brought up. I feel like I missed it, but
we might have mentioned it. But yeah, I had kind of set it up, and then I think Johnny and Nick and I were chatting about something else, and I sent it to you guys, and you guys were like, "Oh, what if it was like this instead?" We changed like just a couple minor things, but like, yeah, I love homebrewing that sort of stuff, and I think from the beginning, I want to explore more of this with some of your other characters. Like, I love the sub-bending stuff in Avatar. Like, a character learning some form of bending that only is known by a few people. Like, that stuff's just so interesting to me. And I think what's interesting to me about it is that it's rare, is that it's unique, is that it's different. And so, like, there's some sense in which just doing the sub-bending that we do know about doesn't quite hit that same thing for me. So I was like, I would love to introduce different types of sub-bending.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
I kind of just want to explore what we think our sub-bending ability would be. Like, in terms of, like, would it be like metal bending? Would it be healing? Would it be
like we as people?
Yes, us as people.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me because there's some types of bending that have like way more sub-bending.
Mm-hmm.
I know people peg me as a waterbender, and I think my choices at that point are like healing and blood bending.
Oh, that's like pure opposites.
And those are literally could not be the more opposite from each other. So I'm definitely not a bloodbender for sure. So healing.
I forget what we established. I think that some of y'all argued that I might have earthbending tendencies, but then I felt like I was more of an airbender in real life. The extreme of that, I mean, I'd love to levitate.
Just got to get rid of all attachment.
Flight.
Yeah, I just have to detach myself from the world, which, for those who are into Enneagram, it's kind of part of my avoidance anyway as a 7, Enneagram 7.
There you go.
So
there you go.
I'm already trying to detach myself a little bit. So maybe that's my sub-bending, if I could master that.
Yeah.
Detachment.
Yeah, just not caring at all about any of you. That's my superpower.
I feel like flight would be the one I want to have because that's just so fun.
Who doesn't want?
It's so cool. But I'm not. I don't know which, like, technically which one I'd be able to tap into in real life.
I did want to say, because Chat mentioned it, because there's plant bending with water bending, and there's also like ice and steam, and they're all kind of seen as like these accessible things that any waterbender can learn. But I feel like if you were to have like a signature style, it would probably be like plant bending.
Yeah.
Me?
Yes.
Oh, you?
Me, plant bending. Why?
Yeah, that's what I get. I don't know.
You just got like a foggy swamp vibe from Justin.
I got like a foggy swamp vibe.
No, just like something about plants.
What do you think, Doe? Think we should go over there and eat that there flying bison?
I do love Cajun food.
Oh.
So
There you go.
Maybe
There you
Justin would be
go.
the most rare kind of waterbender and become the moon.
yes. That's my sub bending.
People are lining up to become the moon.
My sub bending is I am the moon.
I am the moon.
Ocean bending. Johnny, Monroe, what do you guys think? What
I
do you
think
it would be?
we had this conversation a little bit last time too. I always feel like I'm right on the line, on the fence about whether I'm an earthbender or a firebender. And so I think I generally lean toward earthbender. But I think maybe that question of whether I'm a firebender puts me in the lava bending camp.
There you go.
The Wrath of Johnny. Ro?
I always thought I was more of a waterbender, so I'm gonna have to go with bloodbending with this one. I think I have some dark tendencies. We're working on it, though.
Yeah, the secret is that Monroe has not been acting at all.
That wasn't dark.
Oh, no.
The Dark Nico arc was wish fulfillment, not a
Improv storytelling.
Oh my gosh.
Funny.
Just needed a place to express yourself.
Yeah, but ice is pretty cool too, though. So
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
maybe that'd be ice.
All the stuff you can do with ice. I mean, the stuff they do with ice is so elaborate in the series. I love it.
Yeah, I have a journal full of just things to do with ice. Like, with ice knuckles, ice spears, ice shields. There's like so much to do. I have like a whole
Cocktails.
page full of
I was waiting for
Yeah.
somebody to say
Ice,
something like
ice
that.
cutlery.
That's awesome.
Sculptures.
Yeah.
Like a bunch of little ice Legos.
Yes.
That
All
is
the above.
probably difficult, but yeah.
Igloos.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice.
There you go. Yeah. So moving into, I'm calling it the Xenu arc. This is actually it's gonna be interesting for me to talk about because I wasn't there the first episode when we moved into this arc. Rozak was there, but not really. Rozak wasn't there. That's when the whole soul exchange thing happened. That's when people weren't themselves.
Oh, that was weird.
Yeah, that was very weird. Justin, for you, was that something that you were planning, or was that kind of like, oh, we're missing a podcaster? I'm just gonna throw an NPC in his brain.
Honestly, I don't remember.
If I can jump in there, because I remember the conversations about that, because when I was gone, when we did the Foggy Swamp episodes with the cabin, there was like a natural party split, so it was easy to keep Osa out of those episodes. And we had conversations about, like, do we manufacture a party split so that Rozak doesn't have to be here, or like, what do we do? And then I don't know how you came up with the idea, but at that point, Justin, you were like, okay, I think I know what I'm going to do, and then kept it a surprise for us.
You're right. I do think it was in the moment, like as we were talking, I was like doing the GM brain thing and like running through a bunch of scenarios and being like, what makes the most sense? The Xenu arc was very interesting to me because, so I don't know if you guys remember this at all, but when you left Omashu, I explicitly asked you guys how you were going to get to Ba Sing Se, and I laid out your options. One being go through the Siwang Desert, and the other being going around the Siwang Desert. And I think I did a pretty good job of not telegraphing which one I had wanted you to go down. But you guys decided to go around the Siwang Desert, and so I had to flip and make some changes in some of the things that I was thinking through. So like a lot of that next arc, so like Chainao and Now Zhao as you're camping and all the stuff in Xenu, that was kind of me coming up with that stuff a lot more on the spot than I normally do.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm curious about like.
Sorry.
I know as a player, not necessarily like my player thoughts influenced my character decisions in this case for sure. But like, I remember when you gave us that choice, feeling like I as a player didn't want to go through the Siwang Desert specifically because in Avatar: The Last Airbender, we spend so much time as viewers watching them in the desert, specifically on their way to Ba Sing Se, and I didn't want to feel like we were retreading the same ground.
Just do that again. And I love that, and I think it's a great decision. It ended up being like some of my favorite stuff. Like it was you know, I don't want to say like too much, but like I wanted to go into more Shoban stuff if you went into the Siwang Desert, because of, you know, Shoban's ability to sandbend. It seemed like a natural way to like keep putting some of his character in the spotlight for you all to interact with as a new party member. And so having to like, and I, you know, forget too that like General Shi, you just took out General Shi too. And so I also had to have this like shift of like, all right, where is the big bad coming from? Like, where is the final fight going to happen in this season if it's not who I thought it was going to be this entire time? So there was like a lot of perspective shifting in those first few episodes after Omashu.
It's cool. One of the things I really like about the Xinu arc is the fact that we didn't finish it. Like, it was the first time we had to like actually run from something, and we ended up.
I hate that about it.
I don't know. I love that. Like, I think it.
I'm in Steve's camp.
I
felt so disappointed leaving.
Like,
Gino. I was like,
I did too.
Critical
I think that's
failure.
why I love it. Like, I feel like now that we didn't finish something, one, there's things to like explore still within our own history, but then also like, I don't know, failure builds in storytelling. Failure builds.
Don't
character.
sound like my dad. Oh, you did it. You did it.
I feel like I feel like it helped our characters feel more real too. Like we weren't able to just go down the road on the way to Ba Sing Se and like succeed at every obstacle that was in our way. Like we met something and ultimately we weren't able to conquer it. And I think that just really helped us feel more grounded in reality and feel like real, like relatable teenagers.
I will say, to Johnny's point, that I think some of the intensification of like group drama and therefore like bonding in our relationships, like that came into more sharp focus because of that failure. Like that was part of like maybe shifting our sense of self a bit as a group. Like, oh, not everything we touch turns to gold. So...
Well, no, just to build off of that, I feel like that was the tone of this entire half of the season, right? Because finishing Omashu felt like a failure. It felt like we lost, right? Because we lost Osa. And then immediately Rosic and Che have this argument and this big, huge thing that they're doing. And then we just kind of like leave and, throw Justin's plans into the garbage. And then like Che has to deal with his dad and then doesn't really deal with it. And then we just have to leave behind Xinu. And then we get into Liko stuff and that doesn't go well either. It's just kind of like the first half was very much like we're going places and we're doing stuff and we're getting it done. And then the second half is like, we're going places.
It was reality check.
And stuff is happening to us. Yeah.
I think Liko was the one who kind of gave the bad juju. She was the one who said, like, haven't you noticed? Remember that line? Like, haven't you noticed that everywhere we go, we just like destroy everything?
Yeah, that stuck with me. That stuck with me too, Monroe.
That translated to my real life. That was so impactful.
Sorry.
Oh no!
No, it was great. No, it. I think that even helped me to like that. I think ended up being, it's improv storytelling, so like you don't quite know what's going to happen or where things are going to go. But I think that ended up being like one of the big themes of this first season was like what can you all do together and what can you do alone, and what are the things that you can't do alone that you have to learn how to do together, and not just like physically around each other but like working together.
But also who we are apart.
And who you are. Exactly. It's that balance of like who are you as an individual and who are you in the group.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nick, what were you saying?
I was just going to say, I think the biggest answer to Justin's question, or like the proposed question of the season, was failure. It was what we couldn't do alone. We couldn't handle failure alone. We were all just falling apart every time. And it was coming together that made it even possible for us to keep moving forward.
I think one of the other big themes that started to come out in that arc, with the possible exception of Rozak, but not even entirely, was this theme of who you actually are versus who everyone expects you to be. And like who you've been like told you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
But also who we expect us to be too.
Yeah.
And realizing we're not that either.
Yeah.
And I think the second half of the season really did have those, I guess, those morals, the moral of the stories points. It was like it was almost hit after hit. Like the first season was almost setting it up to be like, oh yeah, we're a bunch of kids, everything's gonna work out for us because that's just how this is. And then the second half was like, oh no, this is gonna be hard.
Yeah. The second half, Justin made us cry every single week.
Oh, I remember like we would get so mad at him. You guys don't understand. Like we almost like cursed him out at the end of one of we were so mad at him.
Justin, we weren't ready for this.
Signs of a good GM,
Yeah.
While we're on everything that happened in GNU, there were some interesting things that happened there, other than the whole people are not themselves, literally. That was also the introduction of the prophecy, the launcher prophecy, we can call it. And Alyssa had a couple questions regarding that. Alyssa from Discord. They asked, how much did you prepare for the prophecy stuff for Rozak and Che, the scroll in GNU? Did you know ahead of time that Psychon would be making an appearance, or are most of those choices made as you go? Do you just keep certain characters in mind for who could show up if given the opportunity?
One of the things when I had first thought of a prophecy that I didn't want to do was to have a solution to the prophecy, or like have the events in mind to like what that prophecy refers to, because that felt very antithetical to how Powered by the Apocalypse works. And honestly, just to how like I would imagine prophecy would work in real life. Like it would not be clear. It should be, like I drew a little bit on some of my like studies in religion, where like you read these like biblical prophecies and you realize that, and when we read it now, we attribute it to some moment in the future. But for them, it was a very clear, like almost present thing. Like they were imagining these events in a much different fulfillment than we were. And so I wanted to have it be ambiguous. I wanted to have Now Zhao think the prophecy was one thing, and then kind of leave it up to mostly Rozak and Che to kind of figure out like what actually does this prophecy mean.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that me, Danny, the player, was thinking in terms of that as well. Like I feel like Now Zhao is kind of catering this prophecy towards him. Like the entire time I was thinking that he's just wrong. It's the spiritual prophecy is not about him at all. I don't know if Rozak wasn't necessarily keeping that in mind. I feel like Rozak kind of just acknowledged the whole prophecy scroll thing and then just sort of dropped it.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about it too much because I do think there's still a lot of room to use it. Because in my head, I think you're exactly right. Like Now Zhao and this prophecy and now Che are still all wrapped up together. Like what exactly does it mean? Where is it going? And then the Psychon thing, maybe this is lifting. Well, here's what you do as a GM in Powered by the Apocalypse, right? Like you prep certain things. You don't prep solutions. You prep certain things. A lot of times that's just prepping how NPCs are acting in the world without you interfering with them. And it just ended up happening well that like because we had set up that scene with Now Zhao and Che, all of a sudden I was like, well, he's already in the area, and that means the Fire Nation's in the area, and I think Now Zhao is going to try and use the cover of a Fire Nation invasion to test out these new machines of war to steal the scroll. That was the cover to get to Xinu and steal the scroll. And so I did always was like, Saikon will show up eventually. The Fire Nation army proper will show up eventually because Now Zhao is still trying to play the Fire Nation a little bit and still be buddy with them. So
I like that. Another big moment in the Xinu arc was the challenge that Shoban presented to Saikon for the one-on-one duel. I don't fully remember, but that wasn't really planned, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah,
not at all.
I think Shoban just wanted to impress Liko.
Honestly, yeah.
It was just like a teen boy moment. It's like, well, I challenge you to the death.
I think we talked about that like off air after that episode. Like that was fully what was going through Shoban's mind at the time.
Yeah.
What might have been,
Che would have also done the same thing, specifically because he was a firebender. Like, because it would have made sense to do so. Like, this is a firebender. If you challenge him to a one-on-one duel, he will be honor bound to accept, and it's your best chance at surviving this.
Yeah.
But I love that you were just like, yeah, this is girl over here. I'm gonna fight this guy.
I mean, I feel like it kind of worked. Monroe,
It worked great.
Yeah, Monroe, you feel like being in Liko's mind? It kind of worked, right? Liko seemed kind of like at least a little more worried about Shoban in that moment,
Yeah, she was definitely losing her sense of self during that time. She usually doesn't care about other people. Not that that's a bad thing, but it was just the way how she kind of grew up. That was the start of it, I think. But yeah, she was definitely worried. I don't think she knew why.
Yeah. When you can't get, overt affection, just get some worry,
Well, I feel like she also has anxiety because she's so she bottles everything up. So I feel like she has anxiety. And I think like she was making it worse in her head. And also there was like, she didn't even know what that was with Shoban. Mm-hmm. Like what were they? What weren't they? And then like, here he was, possibly about to die, so that was very confusing for Liko and for me, Monroe, to play. Like, how do I approach this? There's this person that is not supposed to mean anything to me, but he, for some reason, he kind of does. So it kind of worked out, I think. It showed the human side of Liko, I think.
I like that.
Your heart is not made of stone, Liko.
I think we learned that before.
Yeah.
Before Shoko. Is that what they call it? Shoko?
Yeah.
Before Shoko?
That's a good name for it, yeah.
I like it better than Liban.
Liban, yeah.
Yeah,
I was about to say,
Liban? Oh my god.
It's much better than Liban.
Liban's like Cinnabon's new menu innovation.
I believe, Monroe, you were just talking about when Liko had said this, and I believe that was when Liko had said, like, I feel like no matter where we go, we leave destruction in our wake, basically. I believe that was said at the inn after we had left Xinu. And even that whole, whatever, the things we did in that inn, that was just a really, I could even call that an arc in and of itself. The inn after Xinu arcs. There was a room full of beds. There was a team huddle, a group meeting in the PDR, private dining room. I know Alyssa from Discord was asking what are some of our favorite moments from inside that inn.
Definitely the mattresses was funny.
Yeah,
it's funny.
That was good.
I don't think it was mattresses. I think it was full beds.
We moved full beds. Why did we do that?
That's what you guys had said. I think you guys said that we moved all our beds into the room. I'm pretty sure.
We did just say beds, but like it would have made more sense to say mattresses.
I was picturing you guys like taking like basically like 30 to 45 minutes pushing all of your beds into Rozik's room. And that's also why Rozik was like, what the heck?
This is why it took so long to complete our mission. We didn't think just take the mattresses. We said, no, we gotta take the whole bed. Like everything. Box spring, everything. Like
You're right.
I'm not doing this without a box spring. Come on.
I also liked at some point when we realized that in order to put all the beds in there, you would have to move like all the desks out and put it all in a desk room. So there's like a bedroom and a desk room and a closet room.
So much work.
And then that poor old lady coming into the rooms afterwards and being like,
Come on.
What am I going to do now?
I think that has
And we
got
left
to
it
be
that way.
Yep.
You just left.
Oh, also the window was broken.
Yeah, and you broke her window.
That was not our
The window was
fault.
not only broken, but Che had like put it all back. It was still broken, but Che had like put the whole window back up, so it was broken but put back in place.
Well, at least we won't get blamed for the window.
There were just so many great moments in that end, because also after the window had broken, that's when Justin like there is something underneath a piece of glass, but you couldn't see it because it's underneath the piece of glass. And I was like, I couldn't
It's a glass.
because it was
You can see through glass.
I was like, wait.
Wait. Before we get too far out of the inn, I do. It felt. It was one of my favorite moments of Justin's GMing, because it genuinely felt like me and Che felt like Naozao was like playing 3D chess, and I was like 4D chess, and I was just playing checkers, and it was just like it felt like he just had everything accounted for and was just completely surrounding, and that's why Che finally broke down and like talked to everyone, because it felt like there was no way he could ever outmaneuver his dad, because he just like showed up. He was just there, and then he was just there again, but this time with an army. Like it was like I got to do something. So. I did want to point that out, because it genuinely felt like I was like doing this mind game against this character who does not exist, and you are not necessarily driving to just be like an antithesis to like my experience. And it was super cool. So I just wanted to say that was super cool.
Thank you.
I'm going to tag along with that one because Liko had something similar with Iron. Yeah. It always felt like he was 5 steps ahead of her no matter what happened, and it was like one of those things where I was like, I don't even know what to do as a player, as like an actor, as just me. Like I felt like I was in complete like control but also non-control at the same time. It was really good, Justin.
I have never found villains that are like big meat bags that like their thing is they're strong, right? And it's like, oh gosh, how are we gonna like fight this super strong person? Like I always gravitate towards the villain who maybe isn't like the strongest physically, but is just prepared for everything. They've already thought through what you are going to do. And so I think in this sort of story, it works well because it forces you to be creative.
Yeah.
And it forces you to have to come up with solutions that aren't just, I punch them until they give up.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like all of the villains this season were really crafty and like really calculating people.
Oh yeah.
I think like the closest to the like brute you could just punch your way out of this were She and Saikon.
Yeah.
Very meticulous.
We had to do a lot more than just punch our way out. But it was also pointed out in chat that Monroe, you were pointing out that it was like Liko had a similar thing going on with her as Che, but like we also in that conversation, those characters were like, yeah, we both hate this. This both they recognized it in each other, and we were both like, this sucks. And I think that was another one of the, well, it kind of ties in with all of the themes of the season of just like destiny and what that is and what it is to have these ideas like of who you should be or what you should do forced on you and how you respond to that and what that makes you.
Yeah, speaking of prophecies, I don't think Liko had a prophecy per se that was laid out before her, but she did have something, right? Like didn't Iron kind
it was
of
like plans, right? Like everyone had plans for her.
Exactly. And I think like that's something that both Liko and Shay kind of bonded over, was the fact that everybody had these plans for them except for them.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, I just want to go to the bus and say, I don't know what all this is.
If it's any consolation, Ren does not have a plan for your lives.
It actually is, though. That's why it worked out so well between us.
That's why we're hanging in there.
I was going to say, like,
Exactly.
Shoban could have related so well. Like, the other people's plans for him were so strong, they brainwashed him for it. You had to go and box him out.
Oh.
Hey, well, I don't know, man. You brought a cop to Shay. I just ran with it.
Fair enough.
Shoban definitely takes the cake for like the most targeted beat up player of anyone in the group, like by other players, I think. Like,
oh yeah. I was like, I think Liko got beat up pretty badly, but yeah, in terms of like never like catching a break emotionally, mentally, and physically, it's definitely Shoban.
Yeah. Well, while we're on a topic of Shoban / Gemi / Johnny, we have a question. I forgot where it was from, so if anyone doesn't remember, if you can help jog my memory. But the question was, for Johnny, how was it playing two different characters in the same show / campaign? But you were basically played three characters, in this season. So how was that?
It was a lot of fun for me. I mean, honestly, it was. I've gotten better about this, but I have always been the sort of person who, like, as soon as I roll a character, I roll another one that I want to play more than the one I've already committed to. And so it was fun getting to kind of be myself in that way during the campaign or during the first season.
I've GM'd for people, and I've GM'd for tons of people like that, and I've had to like. I personally, as a GM, hate just changing characters just because you're bored with the character. You want to try something new. So that's why. But like, the end of Osa's end didn't feel like that.
Yeah,
like it did not feel like you were intentionally trying to get rid of Osa,
and
so you could play with someone else.
Yeah.
Like it. I know you weren't, and that's why I wasn't like I was okay with it, because it was like, this feels like what Osa would do in that moment. Be very heroic. It would be very final, but it would be what he would want to do.
Yeah.
So
I was so.
And same with Shoban at the end of the season. Like, you know, it's just it felt natural for Sho to stop adventuring and stay in Ba Sing Se. Like, it just feels like what it would happen.
Yeah. So speaking of Osa, Johnny's character, and that pivotal traumatic moment that kind of caused a stopping point in the group. Now that we're on the Jinyu arc, this is where we sort of met another pivotal traumatic stopping point. A loss of something, not a character, but a limb.
A piece of a character. You know?
A piece of a character. I just want to ask about that quick. We'll get more into why the group found themselves at the Tesoro ruins in the first place. But Fakbo from Discord asked just in general, how was the decision made to remove Liko's arm? And I remember it being very in the moment, being very fast paced.
I mean, I think it's on the podcast. That's exactly how it played out.
Yeah.
It wasn't planned. It was like...
Yeah,
it was
a bad
basically
roll.
the roll of the dice.
Yeah.
I think the only thing we cut out is the, like... There are a couple times that I, like, am rambling and I stop and make sure that what's about to happen is okay with you. I didn't want to say what was going to happen, because I did want to, like... I wanted to have that shock value, because that felt really important in that moment. But I also wanted to, like, telegraph, like, this is going to be really bad. Are you sure you're okay with me going this far? Because I can pull back and do something else. And you were all like, do it, just go for it.
I hated that so much because Rozak had nothing. There's nothing he could do. He had used all his energy to do that super firebender scream, and then Batok trapped him in an ice wall. And I was like, all right, come on. Well, what were you saying, Ro?
I was just gonna say that, like, if this were happened in real life, we wouldn't get the choice. And I feel like we had to stay true to Liko and to the other characters and the story, and that's why the dice is there. So you have to stay true to the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pushes it in ways that we wouldn't expect. That was another moment. I know I said this last time, but like one of the GM moves that I always have trouble sometimes conceptualizing is like turning a move back on its player. That was, I think, the only other time I did that move this entire first season was because I think Johnny said, I moved to try and cut Batok's arms off, and he rolled the miss.
Yeah,
and I was like, let's turn that back on him and cut off an arm that he does not want to cut off.
Yeah, that was hard for me as a player. Like, Shoban aside, like being responsible for another player taking a serious injury like that, another player's character. That was a difficult moment.
Yeah.
Well, it set up that super interesting scene in the arena.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the foil of that, and like both of you two processing through like what the moment in the Tezuro ruins meant to both of you. I love that. I remember, I mean, this is skipping ahead, but like that was a moment where I, as a GM, was kind of like fumbling because I was like, oh, we got to make sure Johnny's okay with this, because you can't just like cut off another player's arm without like checking with him first, making sure he's okay with it.
Oh, I love that. Before jumping forward, I want to take a couple steps back. I said we'd explore a bit more how we got from that inn after Jinyu to the Tezuro ruins. And we talked about everything that happened in the inn, the beds riddling the floor in Rozak's room. Poor Rozak. That was actually a really cool moment. I think we talked about this word in that moment. It was a Ren-centric moment. It was a Rentric moment. Because Ren, they were approached by the Kyoshi warriors, and their uncle's name escapes me.
I think we named my uncle Gimo.
Gimo, yeah.
I thought he was a servant.
Yeah, he's not his uncle.
He's my uncle in scare quotes.
Uncle. Yeah.
He had uncly vibes.
He was an uncle figure to Ren.
Yeah. I think that's a good moment to just explore some great questions about Ren in general. These are from Instagram. One of them is, Ren seems to be one more trusting of everyone, yet still keeps at a distance. Why is that? And does that make it hard to play at all?
Yeah, when you sent me this one, I felt so seen. It was incredible. I was like, I succeeded in at least one regard with this character. Because that is kind of like a tension for Ren. And I think that was better named than I could have put it. Like, yes, Ren is in some ways playing safe, not showing all cards, being a guarded person. For most of the first season, it was regarding being intersex and not talking about his family or origins a ton. Like, I think the group is aware that Ren came from money. I think that snuck in at a few points. I tried to show Ren's love for hot baths over the course of the season. Just little like hints where it's like, even though we've all been roughing it together and there's no issue, Ren is used to some comforts and loves food and grieved through food after Osa died. So I tried to like kind of pull some of those threads of that background. But yeah, I think it is hard to play this dynamic of like, how is Ren both trusting and guarded? And I think Ren trusts that over the course of time, all of his friends will become the best version of themselves. But that does not mean that right now Ren is going to be as vulnerable as Ren could be. So that's probably one way to cut it.
Dang, that's sweet.
I had a question for Steve. Do you think that like he believes in everybody else except for himself?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah?
100%.
I get that vibe too, but I wasn't sure if that was like the angle you're going for.
Yeah, Ren doesn't know what to do with himself yet. So that's come, I think, to the fore with getting really scared after our critical failure in Genu. And I think it got even more pronounced when Ren had this conversation that he wanted to have with Liko after watching the bloodbending incident, right? And not being able to have that conversation and Liko leaving, which was like ultimate fulfillment of fears. So I think that made Ren feel even more pronounced this sense of vulnerability and a desire to just focus on everyone else and bring them together. And so I think Ren has a lot of work to do that he can't do because he's just so preoccupied with not wanting the group to fall apart, honestly.
Yeah. I think that's so cool too, because I feel like throughout the season and especially the second half, Ren kind of had this theme of like he cares about everyone in the group so much, but he's also sort of just like on the sidelines, like they're sort of like just like watching these things happen. I mean, like looking at how when they followed Liko and they saw that happen, all they could do was just see that happen, and then they couldn't even get a conversation about that afterwards.
I was so frustrated because of how many times I had to suspend that conversation.
So, Steve, from that moment and for the next preceding like 3 months, he would text me at least once a week and be like, I need to have this conversation with Liko. And I'm like, dude, chill. We'll get there. All right. It'll happen.
For those in the audience, the conversation we're referring to is the one where they have a heart-to-heart on Rue finally, after Liko rejoins the group. That conversation was meant to happen, at least from my perspective as a player, way back in, what was the name of that place where Liko left us? I can't remember.
It was
the place with the cave.
Full Moon Bay.
Yes.
Yeah.
The bay.
It was the cove or something.
Right. Yes.
The cove.
Yeah.
So that was hard.
I have another follow-up question for Steve, if that's okay. Just talking about Ren being guarded and stuff. And I think, like we've already kind of mentioned, like we see really in this second half of the season, Ren's affection for everyone else fully on display and like really coming to the fore in his interactions and stuff. This is kind of was asked by someone, I'm not sure who, but as a follow-up question to a different question, but I'm going to ask it here because I'm curious. I'll have to rephrase it a little bit, so apologies to whoever wrote it. But it says Ren would have spent more time training with Osa as they had agreed to do. Meditating with Osa was calming and also a bit of a bonding experience. Osa also showed a bit of tenderness to Ren. Do you think, or Steve, do you think that Ren's walls would have come down earlier if he fully grasped the depth of Osa's rage and willingness to die? And like,
absolutely.
What do you think would have been different about, or how do you think Ren's response to Osa's death like affected his willingness to open up to everybody else and things like that?
Right, because we mentioned that there had been a sidebar, right, between Ren and Osa that got close to like saying this is what's going to happen kind of a deal, and I have to go through with this. And I don't know that Ren fully appreciated the depth of Osa's rage, and I don't know that Ren fully appreciated kind of Osa's recklessness in the equation. Like, it's like, okay, if it comes to that, you know, I understand that Osa is prepared to die. You know, it is a little bit of this over the top. Is this bravado? Is this pain speaking out? I don't know. But yes, I think that if Ren fully saw and grasped the situation, he would have probably been more close and honest and a little clingy with Osa, because Osa somehow, it's hard for me to describe through your acting, Johnny. Osa somehow charmed past Ren's defenses a little faster than the rest of the group by that point in our story. And
Osa
I think that was
lovable.
Osa was lovable. Yeah, I think there was something.
It's a very lovable character.
There was a protectiveness about Osa as the hammer that I think was comforting, for me at least. And then I think there was also an aspect of like Osa being non-threatening towards Ren consistently. So those might have been part of the recipe there.
Yeah.
But I do think there would have been some more heart to heart, some more honesty. And I don't know what that would have looked like. And I don't want to read that through the lens of all that's happened since.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, I guess the other half of my question really was like, do you think that Ren kind of having the hindsight of Osa's death and thinking about the things he would have wanted to say and didn't, or those conversations, do you think that affected the speed with which he started opening up to everybody else after that point?
Yeah, that was a major paradigm shift. Thank you for zooming in on that, because feeling like people can actually die, that you can lose friends, especially when you're young, that's like such a, like just a shattering reality. And it changes your sense of the time you have with people. So I do think that came through a bit and shaped, I think, all of us. I think that was a main learning point for everybody in the group.
I think something that also really reflected well in your guys' characters and performances was that I think the reason why Osa was so warm, like just like easy to talk to for Ren and was getting through faster is because early on, I think Osa was the heart of, like, it's been said that like in the second half, like Ren was the heart of our group, but I think Osa was at the beginning, like very much. And I think there's a handoff there where Ren sort of was like, I'm going to do this now. and maybe not like consciously, but just kind of filled that role afterwards. And it was, I don't know. I think it's one of the cooler character interactions that we have.
But yeah, so emerging from all the crazy things that happened in the Tuzuro ruins, still thinking about that. That was crazy. I remember between the episode when Liko had lost her arm and the episode after that, we were just texting each other like, what do we do? We were like trying to figure out what's the best course of action to take. What would my character want to do? I know this might work, but will my character know that? We were like diving into like medical procedures.
Yeah, you're trying to find some way to like solve it.
I remember I was thinking like, it's already hard nowadays to reattach a severed arm to someone's body. Think about how much more difficult it would be back then. I mean, sure, we have bending, but I remember that was such a crazy time, such a pivotal moment and a growing moment for all of our characters. Everything that happened after that.
If I can just say, like, I think there was a lesson I feel like I learned in storytelling from Justin through that whole experience of us trying to like figure things out in the group chat, and then the length of time it even took for there to be anything that resembled a solution for Liko with her arm. Like, I feel like I learned both in stories and in games like this that not every problem is something to be solved. Sometimes it's just a story to be told,
or at least solved immediately.
Yeah,
right. Like I think you get into your head because this is such a reactive game. When a problem's presented to you, you feel like you have to react to it. And I think sometimes, especially with some of these bigger stuff, it's okay to be like, we don't have an answer to it right now. And it might take us some time to find an answer to it. And yeah, like I didn't even have like this is when it's going to get solved. Like, I had no plans. And it's funny you're saying that, Danny, because I know Monroe and I were texting individually, and because I wanted whatever Monroe wanted. Right? Like, if Monroe was like, I don't want her to get her arm back right now, then I was like, absolutely. And if Monroe was like, I want the arm back, I'd be like, all right, let's find a way to make that happen, or at least get you closer to that goal.
I like that. Dude, I also just loved the interpersonal interactions after that at the end. And I believe we went to an inn at Tatusu City, correct? Yeah. We went to an inn there, and then crazy things stemmed from that. Rozak and Liko had some conflict going on. After that, Liko did her whole thing, and that's when what we were just talking about, when Ren saw Liko do her little cozy activity.
That's a reference for later.
Yeah. Come back and listen to this after you've heard Brindle Woodbed.
I'm speaking into the future. But that was just, oh my gosh, that was the emergence, the surfacing of Dark Liko, what we've started calling it. And I guess, Monroe, how was that? How was moving into this dark character And we do have a question from Instagram, and they asked, do you think do you think she might have a tendency to dip in to a dark side again?
These questions from Instagram are from Kenneth from Instagram, just to be clear.
They are from Kenneth.
That's all of the Instagram questions, and
All
also the
the
one you
Instagram
couldn't remember who it was from. Just to be
There
clear.
was a different name above it, but I knew it wasn't that person who asked it. That's why I just said
Someone might have asked a similar question, but it's whatever. Moving on.
The question was, can she go dark again?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, if you have anything to say about how it was just developing this character into a more like dark context.
Darker version. Okay, so first part, how was it like? I knew from the very beginning that it was going to be Liko who was going to have to do that, because everyone kind of seemed really goody two shoes, and it was like this isn't going to be great storytelling, honestly, because there's nothing to relate to. And not everyone, human beings are not all good all the time. Like, we do some bad things sometimes, and some people do bad things all the time, and there needs to be a representation of that. And I knew from the very beginning, if it was going to be anybody, it was either going to be Che or Liko. And I couldn't see that from Che at that particular moment, but I could totally see Liko because she already kept people at a certain distance. So I texted Justin and said, how would you feel if, we did something, we went dark with Liko at some point? And he was all for it. He was very supportive, and we thought it was going to happen in the first half, but it didn't happen. It didn't feel right. And and I know that he set up so many moments for Liko to turn dark, but none of them felt right until the moment she lost her arm. And in that moment, she felt like she lost, because when you're a waterbender, you need your limbs to control water. And I felt like she lost a really big part of her identity. And when you lose that part of you, I think that it's natural to kind of explore other sides of your personality, whether they be good or bad. And I thought it was really important to show someone who messes up and tries to fix that. So that way it's not always like, these are good people who are doing good things, and look, they're good, very boring. I wanted to be someone to be like, oh yeah, she messed up. Like, I messed up too. And look at her trying, like I think I can keep going. Like, if Liko can go through all of that and her friends are still there for her, maybe my friends will be there for me too.
Yeah.
There you go.
I know this is just me. This is me as like a audience member, as like a viewer. I'm like, I can't wait to explore more of like Liko wrestling with the things that she's done in the next season. Like that seems like absolutely like what's something that she would be wondering, is like, all my friends know I've done these things, and yet they're still accepting me. Like, how does that interaction work? So I don't know. I know me as a listener is really interested in that,
and Liko's worst enemy.
Yeah.
So if she knows that her friends know, it doesn't even matter if they knew or not. She would always know. And as far as can she go down that path? Absolutely. She already did it once. She could do it again. I think it'd have to be a much different situation. I think she would fight it with all her might, but I do think it's possible for, I think all the characters have the possibility of reaching someplace dark. But I think, I don't know. We honestly haven't even talked about season 2, but I wouldn't be surprised if Dark Liko makes another appearance.
Yeah, if that happens and you head down that path, Ryan will be like hanging on to your ankles, dragging behind you. But it is what it is,
Like, no, please.
It depends on what happens to everybody.
Take me with you.
I mean, honestly, I feel like these conversations even started in character a little bit. But like, I feel like if Liko goes down a dark path again, it's just everybody's going with her. It goes from dark Liko to dark group pretty quickly.
it just becomes a villain campaign.
Yeah,
it's basically. The energy's passed around. Because once she started going dark, that's when the whole Shoban don't trust him, whatever is going on. That kind of happened as not a sidebar, but just separate from her because she left.
Yeah.
And then good old Che, old faithful, was able to stir up some drama because Liko and Che are very similar. But I also want to say that it's not so much that she lost her identity; it's also the fact that people were trying to control her.
Yeah.
You know, like you had Iron, who was trying to control her destiny, and then I can't remember who the guy was, but I feel like wasn't he trying to like test her to see like, oh yeah, this is how far you can go if you do this and that. So she's being controlled by men particularly, and she didn't. That was a very off balance thing. If it was like General Shi, it might be a much different situation, but because it was a bunch of men who were trying to control her, I think that had a much different reaction from her. And I don't want to be like, oh yeah, it's because they're guys, but it's kind of true. Like when you're being bombarded by a bunch of men who are like, or the opposite sex in general, just coming at you, that does have a reaction. It does have consequences. And I think that got into her head too. And I think that's also why she was, you know, oh, Liko. She was just, she was very mean, right? She was just very mean, particularly to men. And let's not forget, she was not letting Shoban off the leash. She was like, she gave him a really hard time. And I think it's because of that, like, here are all these guys trying to tell her who she is and what she can do. And then all of a sudden, it's another guy who cuts off her arm and makes her question her identity.
Trying to take some.
I wouldn't say he dumped her, but he did something. Whatever they weren't. I'm never going to drop it, John. Like,
he was brainwashed.
She was manipulated.
He was.
I know, but she didn't know that.
That is like you have some relationship with a guy. He does something, and now you're mad at some other guy you've never even met. Because the first
it was
guy,
still
but
you.
It's true physically, but mentally, there's a break.
Didn't know that.
She didn't know that.
Yeah, she didn't know that. I don't even think Shoban probably knew that at the time.
Not quite.
To be fair. Yeah.
But yeah, dude, such a crazy moment. Like what we were just talking about. So many insane and just really interesting interpersonal conflicts stemming from the loss of Liko's limb and the emergence of Dark Liko. So cool. And then after that, we moved into the whole Cove arc. I called this arc the Hatusu City / the Cove / Full Moon Bay / Half Moon Hollow arc.
Oh, that one.
This was like a multi-layered district, man. This was like a multi-layered city.
Yeah, that's the thing. They were different districts. It was like one city. It was Hatusu City, and there were different districts to it.
I think a big reason I loved it so much was because I just watched Arcane, and I was like, ooh.
Oh, okay.
But it was so cool. And that's also when we kind of got to explore the Lake Laogaiing people. I think someone called that into Discord. Someone got Lake Laogaied. The brainwashing, what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
And I guess we could go back to, we already talked about this a bit, like when Justin and Johnny, when you guys had decided to have the Gemi / Shoban whole like DID thing going on there, which was super cool. Was that around when you guys had decided that, or was it like decided far before that? Like, because I know that's when we were, as players, were listening, but Johnny was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go do my thing," and we're like, "Oh, what's he doing? We don't know."
I think you guys met Shoban, like, or Gemi. You brought Gemi back to the house you guys were staying at, and he had that like initial interaction with Liko, and then I remember having the thought around that time, what if this is not who this guy really is? Like he's trying to be like smooth and ingratiate himself to these people, but what if that's just not who he is at all? And so then I texted Justin and we started talking about kind of how to play around with that.
I remember that. I remember because when Rozak had met Gemi, and Rozak was the very first person in the group to meet Gemi, basically the only reason Rozak had trusted Gemi was because he was like, "Oh, I know your mom. I went to the same school as you," or whatever, something he pulled out of his butt. And that's like the main reason where I was like, this guy is cool. He took calculus.
We went to school together.
Which like I had during those initial interactions as Gemi with the party, I had a document open in front of me that Justin had sent me, which was basically like, these are the dossiers the Dai Li gave you on each of them before you go find them.
I love that so much.
And it wasn't everything.
Right, it wasn't.
Because, there's stuff I know about that, each of you and I know about your characters individually that the rest of the party doesn't know yet. So I had to go through each of your characters and be like, this is probably something you would know.
Yeah. It was like,
this is probably something you would know.
Yeah, there was like a note even that was like Ren Song's file is like entirely redacted, and it would take someone extremely powerful or extremely wealthy to be able to do that, and that was all it said about Ren.
I think that's all I gave you. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That is so cool.
I love how much of a mystery Ren is without knowing it.
I know, right?
That was fun for me because, I mean, to the testament of like what you can do to influence the narrative as a player in this game, when you were like in character deciding what to do with Liko, and Shoban was like, there's a Dai Li outpost in Full Moon Bay. There wasn't before. At least in my head, there wasn't before. And so as soon as Johnny said that, I was like, perfect. Yeah, I love that idea. That's a great idea.
It immediately went very poorly.
Yeah.
Speaking of the whole mystery of Ren, I know a trivia question I don't think we ever got to ask last week was, how many weapons did Ren use throughout the first season? And we could answer that, but also I want to get to a question asked, and I was so bad at taking notes, but basically the question that was asked, if someone can help me remember who asked this, it was, how does Ren hold all these weapons?
With a bag of holding.
Yeah.
With a bag of holding type 3, of course.
Yes, type 3, of course.
That's a fair question. I think we've just let the fiction be the fiction when it comes to Ren's. Like, at any given point, Ren has not had like 8 things, right? It's been like more like a slow in and out rotation of things.
Yeah.
So I think there's some plausibility we maintain there, which is good. It's not like I had a battle where like you saw a bunch of different weapons come out of nowhere.
Yeah. I imagine at least like maybe like somewhere along the line they got like a bandolier of darts or something.
Sure,
Maybe
something to hold it, you know,
like a side
little
pouch,
set,
a bunch of darts.
Yeah.
They just reach their hand in their pile of darts and hope they don't get poked or something.
You don't want to get poked by those. That's true.
You don't want to get
Can't
poked
just
by
use
those.
pockets.
It's like needles at the playground.
A very
Wow.
large satchel. What's this? Ren just has a huge biker backpack.
Yeah, we could all pontificate and we'll let the artists get to work on that.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, I think I had written down my best sense of how many weapons Ren used. Anybody have any guesses?
I'm gonna guess 5, unless we're counting standard war fans and metal war fans as separate weapons, in which case I'll say 6.
I was gonna say 6.
I'm one under that. I'm if bamboo and metal war fans are different, I'm 5. Otherwise, I'm 4.
Wait, do the individual war fans count as 1 or 2?
No, that counts as a
That is
weapon.
asking.
It's a weapon, yeah.
And I'm wondering. Okay,
Like a
because I
pair
was
of
counting them
shoes.
as individually.
Nick's like, I'm at
Yeah, but
13.
like-
I don't understand how they're all.
I'm at like 30 plus.
Just war fans, you're at 3. So I don't know what you're
Every individual dart is a different weapon.
Exactly.
That's ammunition. That's different.
No, here we go. So in our document, it looks like we had just put down 4.
Really?
So it was written, it might just be in general terms. So we wrote fans, darts, dagger, naginata.
Fans, darts, dagger, naginata.
I swear
Yeah.
I might just be mixing Avatar Nickelodeon show with our podcast, but I swear at one point Ren was using a sword.
That's what I thought
I was
too.
about to say at one point, I don't remember the context, but I remember that Gemi/Shoban gave Ren his hook sword.
He did.
A hook sword.
Yeah.
He did
A
give
hook
Ren a hook
sword.
sword.
Yep.
Yes.
It
Yes.
is in fact 5.
That's right. And then if you count using hands, which Alyssa just put in the chat.
Throw in
Agreed.
hands.
Well, I was going to ask
The thing
Steve,
is, did I
if-
get an opportunity?
does Ren have workable biceps? Because then he himself is a weapon.
Yeah.
We've already established that Steve
Ren
has
is
workable
like
biceps.
pretty slight of frame, but you know, despite the lack of
Can we count
presentation worthy biceps.
Can we count less than gentle words? Because then we're at 7, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, also, you guys all forgot that he also picked up the cutlery from that.
Yeah.
bike
No,
that
he
they-
attempted to pick up the cutlery.
Oh, yeah.
It was a far too complex task.
Yes. He couldn't hold the fork.
All right, let's not.
That was such a difficult scene. That was so hard. Ren's ending this season was painful, but there is more to come.
In the beginning of the second half, Ren attacked a bowl of shrimp with his face.
That counts.
So that could count.
That is true.
Right,
that was Shoban's introduction to Ren. That man is sleeping in shrimp.
Yeah. Sleeping in shrimp. I love that.
The shrimp didn't stand a chance.
Love it. That was like the first time where like Ren and Rose like sort of switched, and Ren became the comedy relief.
Yes,
I was like, I love that.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say like something Steve said earlier that reframed that scene for me entirely was that he was like taking comfort in food in response to Osa dying.
Yeah.
Which like there are a few things that Ren did that like reframes completely.
Yeah, Ren was like kind of dead to the world and like barely tailing along at that point. Like the whole like kind of being out of it, exhausted, and just being like darts, which we like of course rightly played up in the humor direction. Like because like one word sentences like, what are you doing, Ren? This is like odd. It's a strange way to ask for darts. Like that was like still Ren not recovered at all. Very disoriented, just wanting a weapon, you know, and you can see kind of part of the response to loss there.
That's interesting. I kind of want to move things along. I'm curious, Danny, one of my favorite scenes was Naozao and Rozuk outside of Full Moon Bay as he was like escaping.
Yeah.
That was such a good scene.
I'm just curious, like what was going through your head in those moments.
So fun to play out. I just remember Rozuk thinking, me as a player, like basically being like, Rozuk's thinking like, is Naozao behind this? I mean, obviously he is, but I feel like Rozuk was kind of like, no, I kind of hope he's not, you know, but I mean, obviously he was. And then that moment when he had rescued Poi, what was the kid's name?
I don't remember.
Ping, I don't know. Rescuing Ping or whatever, and then seeing Naozao on the beach, Rozuk was like, are you serious? And he was just overwhelmed with anger. And I feel like even I was kind of mad too. I was like, because I was thinking, Danny, like, you, like, this man has spoken about loving us and having this plan for us. And, like, after all this time, but risked almost killing us in this reckless, like, trap that he said or whatever. Rozuk was like, what are you thinking? And this was, I think, the second time that Rozuk had seen Naozao in the first season. I think the first time was on the island that the bathhouse was on. And that was more so a interaction between Che and Naozao, whereas Rozuk was sort of just like, I'm gonna burn your scroll, but
you're not my real dad.
You're not my real dad. I'm gonna burn your prophecy, dad. But Rozuk just really, he used that moment to just really just speak his piece to Naozao.
I'm very curious. I was 100% prepared for you to get into a fight with Naozao. Like to like legitimately like try and be like, I'm going to try and take him out right here, right now. And I'm curious why you decided not to do that.
So, I mean, Rozuk definitely could have taken him because he basically won a fight against Naozao. He knocked him out. He could have taken him with, but Rozuk is so let's just think about everything Rozuk has experienced. Basically, the only reason he left his home to go find Che was because he felt like he wasn't fit to be home. You know, we can explore this more, but Rozuk hurt his mother and he was like, I shouldn't be here. So he basically fled from that situation, you know? And so everything in this season, Rozuk was not able to prepare for whatsoever. Rozuk has basically just been running and clinging to mostly Che in this season, being being the older brother, kind of like clinging to Che, like, oh, like I'm gonna protect you because I need to protect someone to feel like, you know, like there's a reason for me to go on, you know. And I'm getting so like off the hook here.
No, that makes sense. You're saying like if you take out Naozao, there's nothing to protect Che from.
Kind of.
So, like,
and also,
who is Rozak if he can't protect Che from
and also
his dad?
something that I was thinking about too in that moment, and Rozak probably was thinking about too, is, well, the last time I knocked out a adversary and kept him, Che got mad at me. I don't want Che to be mad at me again. So he threw him on a boat and kicked him away and said, all right, I'm just never going to mention this again. And I think Rozak was thinking about that. Rozak was thinking about never mentioning this to Che, also in kind of like a spiteful manner, because Rozak was still hurt by Che because Rozak still thought Che was like hiding things from him, you know, even though Che ended up telling the group about like Naozao visiting them, like with the whole tank thing. Naozao, I have a plan for you, your destiny, blah blah blah. Rozak was still like, oh, you hid that from me for like a day? How dare you? And so Rozak kind of like in spite of Che was like, I'm gonna keep this from him, you know, just so I have secrets too. I'm not an open book. But Rozak still ended up telling Che because he just, you know, Rozak really is just kind of like a puppy.
He's got golden retriever energy for sure.
Yeah, he really does.
And my interpretation of that, at least part of it, was also just that like Rozak has a very different view of Naozao. Right? It's colored by the actions that his mother ended up having to take, and by, you know, what Che has told him. But like, presumably, Rozak actually experienced Naozao not being garbage, right? At some point.
Yeah,
sure.
We talked about this.
And probably has good memories to look on.
Yeah.
That Che does not have.
Yeah.
Right? At all. And he spent his entire life with him. So there's this like very interesting interpretation. And I thought that, you know, I always interpreted some of Rozak's unwillingness to engage in that moment to be like, this dude kind of was my father for a little bit, you know, and just having some of that hesitance in there, whether it was conscious or not.
Yeah, and he definitely still had that even after discovering that prophecy that like, oh, this dude isn't my father. I mean, still all his life he thought of this dude, even if a distant dude, still this dude being his father. So he's still processing the discovery of that prophecy. And like,
also chat just pointed out we hadn't slept in like a day,
like
2 days. We had gone through like 3 giant fights and just like no rest, emotional turmoil, and splintering the party.
I thought Rozak was gonna die saving that kid from the crocodiles.
There were some time jumps in Full Moon Bay. Like, it wasn't like you got there, you didn't sleep. Like, there was some time. That's why, in fact, I think we started one of the episodes with like, what are each your characters doing in the like few days that you've got
I forgot about
to
at
rest
the end
a little bit. So you guys did have some rest. That was actually one of the first times we had like an extended period of like
like downtime.
There's not a lot happening, and I want to see what you guys are interested in doing in this city.
Yeah. So that conversation with Rozak and Naozao, I have another question kind of about that, or starting with that for you, Danny. Because I feel like that's the first time we really got to see a deeper part of Rozak. Like, up until that point, he was pretty... And so I'm just wondering, like, this is kind of how I interpreted it as someone watching that story unfold, was like realizing that maybe Rozak has walls that are just as high as Liko and Ren and Che. It's just that instead of anger or retreat or bravado, his walls come in the form of humor. Like, do you feel like that's an accurate read, or do you think that?
Oh, definitely. Okay. Oh, definitely. Yeah. And it's funny. That's kind of, I feel like me reflecting myself onto the character as well, which was super easy to do. I mean, my first thought process.
I didn't want to call you out.
No, my first thought process was I'm going to be committing to this character, hopefully, for a while. I want it to be easy to play and relate to, because if I can relate to it, like what Monroe is said time and time again, if I can relate to someone, then someone else probably can too out there, you know? And so that was definitely part of it. I love how you say walls, because that's Rozak's whole fighting style. Yeah. He materializes his walls in real life.
Yeah, but then we get like both Liko and Shoban deciding to peace out and try and find their own way.
Gosh.
And we can talk about that. I am in the chat. Someone pointed out that conversation between Ren and the launchers on the boat to Ba Sing Se.
Mm-hmm.
What was it about that moment where you decided, Steve, to like introduce some of those like background stuff about Ren that at that point we had just been kind of implicit about, but you were like finally explicit about?
There's this aspect of Ren kind of playing the harmonious character, being the idealist, trying to bring hope into the equation and draw the best out of people that just gets heightened the more and more things are going badly. And I think we talked about this a little bit on part 1 of Behind the Bison, but there's like teen conflict that's intensifying. So Ren doesn't really even feel like there's room for Ren to initiate conflict or have gripes or not forgive someone. And by the end of season 1, mechanically, I was also all the way to the extreme of my forgiveness and then taken out of the scene. And I'd been like hovering in the forgiveness zone for most of the second half of the season, I want to say. And so I was leaning into that as much as I could as a player as well. But I think that this finally felt like a breath of air for Ren. Like we finally had time on the stillness of this raft or boat. Ren had a measure of safety with the new mentor figure. And I think there's also, just as Ren said in character, like, oh, we're talking about like we're talking about life stuff. We're talking about our hearts now. Like, okay. Like finally I think Ren got to see the launchers having a conversation they should have had a long time ago. And it felt like there was a window of opportunity, and there was just so much pressure and lack of opportunity leading up to that, and Ren just shot through it. So I think Ren could have probably shared about being intersex earlier and felt safe with the launchers. But there was just no opportunity. And having lost Liko from the group, and by this time Shoban dipped, right? Under mind control mode again.
Yeah.
He wasn't mind controlled.
Or just left. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. He had just left on his own terms. There's this sense of like, well, this is who I have right now. And like what Ren is fearing happening is to some extent happening as well with losing people. So I think there was a precious opportunity there to confide in the people Ren did have and hang on to them and let them know more of who he is.
Yeah.
I loved that too when Ren was just like, can I butt in? Can I join this little heart?
Also, we're doing this? We're doing this?
When I loved the cap of you throwing your armor into the water as like a symbol, because there's a lot of gender tied up in Kyoshi warrior armor, right? Like Kyoshi warriors are all girls. And so like to have that be the thing that you toss in the water, I appreciated that as like the symbol of you proving this conversation. Like you're willing to open up to people. So thank you for that.
I feel like the launchers pushed that in a really good direction, because it's like, oh, this makes so much sense. Like the acceptance that I feel and the love, you know, it's like, oh wait, maybe I don't need this, you know, this thing that I've been fighting to cling on to. But you were a little salty.
He was a little salty about the armor. He's like, I'm pretty sure Liko lost an arm for that.
I sold it.
All right. You're doing a thing.
Liko lost an arm for the cause. For the cause.
Right.
For the cause.
For you.
For me as a person. Yeah, not just for my armor. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Thinking about it now, that was probably one of my favorite just moments in the series, was just the launchers and Ren just being alone for a little bit and having to figure out what they're doing just together, which is super cool.
Well, in the tirade of failure, it felt like a moment of victory, right? Like we were talking about how we just kept losing, and now we lost 2 members of our group.
Yeah. And
then we were finally like, hey, I got this stuff going on. And it felt like a win. It felt like I
mean, I would consider the whole town coup to be open too.
Yeah, and all
just Johnny's just shaking his head. Generally speaking, coups are not a win, but sometimes they can be. This was a mixed bag.
It can be great.
I love it.
Yeah, that's right.
I will never not be
Status
salty.
quo is generally bad too, Nick.
I will forever be salty about having gotten these perfect roles, and Shoban creates enough housing for everyone who needs it. And you guys are like, nah, revolution.
All right.
This is the way.
Hilarious.
Before we move into the Bossing Say arc, I just want to get some general questions out of the way. Some very pushing questions that need to be answered. And yeah, just sort of do like a little rapid fire. Here's a question from Kenneth on Instagram for everyone. If we could each have a prop made from our characters, like in real life, what would we have and why? Steve, go.
I think it would be awesome to have the fan that Ren used in the spirit house. I want one.
Dope.
So if anyone knows how to
Dope.
make one, that'd be great. Oh, and why? Because that was a key moment for Ren. A moment where Ren felt strong despite not being a bender.
I love that. Johnny, what about you?
Oh man, I can't think of anything for Shoban, honestly. Nothing that really feels like the right thing. But for Osa, probably just like some sort of a food pocket.
Merch store t-shirts forthcoming with food pockets.
Get like a pocket t-shirt, but there's like an arrow and it's like, this is for food.
Yeah.
I love it.
Matching sweats with one pocket and an arrow that says non-food pocket.
Justin, if you could have one prop made from every single NPC you've played in this series.
Right. Okay. A cabbage with coal on it. A bowl of cat gator stew. It's all food related. Keep with me. Hang on here.
Okay. Yeah.
A cart.
A cart of food. No, I'm done answering this question.
Okay. I think
Danny, the bid is over, Danny.
I think I want an actual wall of fire.
Yes.
That I can just like hold on to, just use.
That's expensive.
Yeah.
It can be very
Also,
cheap depending on
burns.
your relationship with the law.
True. Nick Monroe, do you guys have answers?
I would want her arm, like her the one not the fake one. I mean the fake one, not the
fake one.
not the one that she got cut off. But I would want.
I want to take it from Bat Talk.
I'm gonna put it in a glass case. No, but her the one that Nazao made for her.
Yeah,
I thought that would be cool.
I love it.
Rue, be really nice.
Rue?
a real life water dragon.
I would really like a Rue. I think a lot of us would love a Rue.
Yeah, we don't. Actually, we just change all of our answers to
Rue.
Yeah.
Science, get on it.
We want to. Actually, I mean, that's a great time to plug the Patreon, because one of the goals in there is a Rue plushie.
Yes.
To make a Rue plushie. Yeah.
That would be so good.
Monroe's face. Yes, this is exactly.
Wouldn't that be so cute?
We need one.
I feel like if anyone, yeah.
Loser.
That's my dragon. But Nick, which one? What prop would you have?
Chase bomb bag, probably. Which isn't like a singular like bag. It's like several containers he keeps throughout his person, but like they've just come up so much. And his pseudo firebending is such like a it's really like at the core of like who and why he is who he is, so just gotta do it. Also, then I'd have bombs, which is just kind of cool. I don't know how to do with them, but
I should mention we will not be making bombs as a part of our Patreon and putting them on our store.
Unfortunately.
Or giving out fake limbs.
The FBI would be knocking down my door very quickly.
I want to get to one more very general question asked by Mirai on Discord. They just asked what our personal favorite moment was throughout the entire first season. We just kind of explored the majority of the first season in these 2 episodes. But real quickly, what would you say personally each and every one of you would be your personal favorite moment. I still think mine is the in room with all the beds. I think I got the most laughs out of that entire scene playing out.
For me, it would be when Liko reunites with Sho.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And everyone thought that she was gonna. Even you guys thought I was gonna take his arm, and I knew I wasn't, and she knew that she wasn't either. But she wanted to make a point.
You played it so well.
Yeah, I think that was like the moment where she kind of like took back her autonomy. You know, and because she just said what she had to say, and then decided to move on. And it's not a funny moment or particularly emotional, but I think it was a favorite of mine because I felt like we knew Liko before, and then we knew Liko after, and now this was someone who was in between, and it felt more like an actual person now.
Yeah, I think probably like an easy answer would be like Che's moment of balance at the end, but my actual favorite moment of this season for Che was when Liko was in that room by herself after Iron did his thing and was just so upset at everything and everyone. And that moment of connection, I think it really... I talked about how that arc was really like the start of Che like being like, I actually care about these people. And it was because he connected with Liko in that moment. And I think it really changed the trajectory of what he was going to be and what he was going to do. So I feel like that moment of balance starts there. And that's why it's probably my favorite moment.
Yeah, I was going to say that moment too. That's the one where those two had that was the first time that was the first time they both were opened up about anything because they were both closed off. That's crazy. They both opened up to each other first before they opened up to anyone.
Jaco.
I have a feeling there's a lot of questions about that.
You're throwing your boy under their bus.
To be answered in the blossoming romance of season 2. Right?
I loved the scene with Osa and Monk Pasang. Like that was one of my favorite scenes to like tell and also improvise. Because it felt good to like put like a cap on Osa's story, even though it didn't feel like it was like cathartic. It wasn't like satisfying, but it was cathartic. Like it felt good that's how Osa's story ended at that moment.
Yeah.
I would say for me, I'm torn between the conversation on the boat with the launchers and the conversation en route with Liko. But I think the latter probably takes the cake as my favorite moment of the first season because I just been waiting for so long. And because it ended up, I think, going beautifully well with Monroe's responses in character. And I thought you played that really well, Monroe. So I loved what that did for the connection between Ren and Liko.
Yeah. For me, I think my all-time favorite scene the whole season that I wasn't in, I'm going to cheat a little bit and do too, but is probably the scene on the boat with Ren and the Launcher brothers. I really loved watching that unfold. My favorite scene that I was in was probably another conversation that was just between Osa and a character Justin was playing, but Osa and Toko. I really loved that conversation. I think that conversation told me more than anything else previous or after, really, even in character creation, about who Osa really was. Like, I think there was a lot about him that crystallized in that conversation.
And that was kind of like the very first kind of like emotionally deep character interaction that we had in the first season as well. I remember being like, oh, here we go. This is where it begins.
Yeah, Steve, I just wanted to say that your speech that you said to Liko, that almost brought me to tears. Because it was a really heavy speech. I don't know how much time. Obviously, you put a lot of time into it. You were waiting, probably edited it a few times, but it came off really, really well.
I appreciate it. I had written out a version of it and then had to keep editing it because the story kept changing. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to leave this for a bit.
Yeah.
But it felt better to just kind of leave the script aside once the time came.
And now we're here at the finale, the closing bits of season 1. I don't know if I've got any questions. I want to know as a GM what you all thought.
Of season 1?
Of season 1, of how it ended, of where your characters ended, where you have had the story set up for them to go in the future. Like, like as we finish season 1, what are your thoughts?
So for me personally, I loved just everything after the Agni Kai. It seemed like one of those movie endings that fades to black and keeps opening to a new scene. And you kept doing that. You kept just like, I was so cool. And I was like, Justin, stop. We have to wait so long before we can play again. Stop. But it was, oh my gosh, it was so cool. And I just hope that, the listeners had that same reaction. Like, I need to know like what happens next. And so that was just like, as like a fan, as a listener, that was super cool for me to hear in the moment.
As a player, the arena fight, we were like at that, and you were like, yeah, we're pretty close to the end. And in my head, I was like, what is he talking about? How are we close? We're at an arena.
We're nowhere near the castle.
Yeah, what are you talking about, man? And it was because, the king was already not a problem. So it was not really it was, it just worked out that way really well. But it was very surprising to see how it works out. And it was surprising right up until he was like, hey, I'm in the cell next to you. And that whole roller coaster ride was fun. Obviously, I was very satisfied with Che's story, and him the whole time just wanted to talk to his mom. That's like the goal he started out with and finished with, regardless of the ones he picked up along the way, was talk to my mom.
Yeah,
and he got to do
that
it.
conversation.
I don't
was
know if
another
it
one
comes
that was high up on my list of favorite moments.
Yeah, that's definitely up there. I don't know if it comes through much in the episode that we released. But like, I think I had to like take a couple second pause when you asked that question, because I did not expect that question, and it just like hit me. I was like tearing up and crying because I was like, that's one of the most heavy questions that's been asked in the story at all. I think. And so kudos to you. That was great. It was well played.
Rosa kind of had the same reaction. Yeah, Rose was expecting Che to like, oh, it's mom, I'm gonna give her a hug, everything's fine, normal, yeah. And then when Che asked that, Rose was like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Well, I had to sit there and ask myself, what did Che want to say? What did he want to ask?
Yeah.
And I don't think he knew the answer to that either. Going through this whole story and finally getting to sit down and think about it, both of us sat there and we were like, this is messed up.
Yeah.
Why is this like this? This isn't fair. And just having to ask, saying what came to mind. So
well, look what, to some extent, like, it's such a perfect cap to the season, because it's like, look what happened because you didn't come back. Like, would any of this have happened if you had come back for me? Maybe Nowza would have given up. Maybe he, that's what I imagine was going through Che's head. Like, all of this happened because you didn't come back for me. Why didn't you come back for me?
But also, it was like a nice little thing for Che as a character, because I'm sure he put this moment so high, and then like he got in, it was really not that he didn't get what he wanted from it, really, right? Like, you didn't get the answer you were looking for. It didn't solve your problems, and yet you still had to move forward, and live your life. And I think that was a good reality check too. because I think there's a lot of listeners who can probably relate to having a moment that they put up so high and then they get it and they're like, that wasn't
what I wanted.
wanted.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think we should thank you, Justin, because this was a fabulous season 1 and we were constantly putting you on your toes. Sometimes when I help edit, I just look at the sheer amount of talking you have to do between all the characters you play. So thank you for lending us your brain and your time and just putting in amazing work.
I love it. It's so
You've been doing great.
I love playing with you guys. You guys are a great,
I love playing with you.
great cast of players to play with.
Yeah, I think you did a great job delivering on promises that we made to the listeners as far as the story as well, with how we closed the season. There are so many threads we could pull and things that are interesting to continue, but you satisfied me a ton with like pinchy prawns and like setting up Che for like a satisfying resolution between him and Naozao for now. And like, there's just so many moments like that were beautiful that I thought we all collectively landed, but you also, you made possible for us.
I was not looking to hear any of this. I was more just like, even because like you guys are a part of the story too. Like you helped tell the season finale.
You were fishing.
No, I was not.
I'm just kidding. I know. Justin, you are the last person to fish. I know.
I really was not.
I know. I just felt like I needed to say it though. So thank you.
In the chat, someone wants to know, Danny, how did you get to the pinchy prawns plan?
All right.
How long did it take?
Is this our final question for the night? Is this pinchy prawns?
Thing. Is it?
I don't know.
So here's the thing. The episode before the season finale, at the end of that episode, Justin just throws on me, "Hey, Danny, you got to come up with your plan that has basically been like simmering and cooking up the entire season in a week." Like you mentioned this before, in the beginning of the series, you have a week to figure it out. And I was like, well, I can't do that. Like, what?
I think I was generous in giving you a week. I wanted to just put you on the spot and just make you come up with it on the spot.
Who knows what I would have come up with if you did that? It probably might have been better. It might have been better. Let's be honest.
I thought it was pretty good. I liked that as like the penultimate like cliffhanger, because the one of my favorite things about Avatar is that like balance of like brevity and seriousness, and so it just felt right to like have something a little bit lighter and fun leading into one of the more emotional episodes.
Like what's inevitably going to be a very like heavy. And so I think after like the halfway point, like 3 days after that episode had came out, or after we recorded it, I was like, all right, I need to buckle down and figure this out. And so I think I had texted Nick. I texted
You texted
Nick.
me the day of.
The day of?
After.
Guys.
Right after the recording, you were like, what am I going to do?
I work the service industry. Time is nothing to me. I have no idea what it is. It's like a distant memory. But I texted Nick and I was like, I'm at a loss. And Nick was like, what if
3 days later text.
Basically, Nick was like, what if this, what if that, what if this? And I was like, that's great. Thank you so much. And so then I wrote out a
so you're saying that Nick came up with the idea.
I did not give him a plan.
Okay.
No.
I just gave some things.
Give me some concepts.
The plan
you presented the problems, but did not give him solutions.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And so I had written out a script. I basically just Alyssa, I just word vomited. I was like, I need to do this. I just started writing on sticky notes on my desktop. And I looked at what I had made and I saw that it was okay. And in the moment, the thing is though, as we were playing it out, that's when I was like, oh, I could add this to it and that would be cool. That's when I kind of added the whole like Breath of Fire moment, because I was a few weeks ago before that I rewatched Avatar for like the 300th time, and I was on the episode where Iroh was telling Zuko how firebenders, they like control of breath, like their breath is where they get a lot of their technique from for their firebending. And I was like, oh, so Dosa had probably taught Rose like that at some point in their training, because Dosa was Rozek's main firebending trainer, because Sanfen could really just teach Rozek earthbending, which is where the whole like earth wall technique comes from. And so that's where Rozek was like, I'm going to use this training, and I'm in this really cold area, and I'm just going to try to like center myself and just resort to the very core of where my bending abilities come from and use that. And so that was but to sum it up, I just spewed words out onto a keyboard.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
I love just picturing you just like covered in Post-its, like with like almost like a like detective style wall set up with all the pins and strings, drawn connections between like newspaper clippings, and be like, I will figure out Pinchy Prawns.
Like that Always Sunny in Philadelphia scene where Charlie's got like the crazy board of
all the walls.
Yeah.
Yes. Although I find that my best ideas come from moments like that. So I wonder if I should just stop planning anything in my life in general.
Oh, you should plan some things. You should plan things.
Do you plan things?
I plan a lot of things.
Justin has
talking to Danny.
Yeah.
Plan a lot of things. Oh man. I think we should start wrapping up. I want to ask one last question, and I think Danny has like one last topic to talk about. I'm curious if you guys have your favorite cliffhanger from this season.
Cliffhanger as in like to be continued, right? Like
like at the end of one of our episodes, I usually try to, I don't know,
it'd be
ramp up the tension a little bit.
For me, it'd be the finale between Liko and Che.
Oh, that was a fun one. That was all you guys too.
Yeah. Yeah, that was
that was good. I loved that as like the cap really to season 1. Like that felt right for how things would end.
I mean, like it also felt like it was just kind of it was a nice little cherry on top of everything, because everyone was getting closure, right? Because Steve got to say his speech, Ren got to tell Liko got to apologize, Liko got to grab her autonomy back, Rozek and Che got to deal with their parents. You know, Sho got to go and serve and, you know, and get control over his life. And in that moment where like Che and kind of Liko got together, or maybe they got together, they went out for a walk. It was like the two leaders of the group were kind of like on the same page, and then everything was good again. You know, like it just felt like it was just a nice little thing to look forward to see what happens. After so many episodes of like, I don't know what's going to happen next. This is really bad.
Yeah.
You're right. It's a good kind of suspense. It's very exciting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
As Chad suggested, I do think Pinchy Prawns was one of the best cliffhangers. I think we were all thrilled to know like this is when it's happening now. It's happening, and we just need to know what it is.
That was more stressful for some reason than like applying for college. What the heck?
I'm not kidding. He texted me immediately afterwards.
Why was that so stressful?
It wasn't for like guidance. He was looking for comfort.
It's probably because like for some reason I cared about that plan more than I did about college, probably. So that's probably why it was more stressful for me.
It's his brand. All right, give him a break.
Well, we're definitely learning a lot of Danny. Yeah, that's great.
I'm not gonna drop out of Flying Bison Podcast. There you go.
Priorities.
Yeah. Priorities.
My favorite cliffhanger was definitely the Murder She Floats part 1 and ending the episode with Osa falling. And it was that I think I got to feel a little bit of what you feel when you leave us with the cliffhangers, Justin, because like I got to watch, because I knew where I was going with Osa. You knew where I was planning on going with Osa. But at that point, I don't think it was super clear to everybody else yet. And so watching all of their faces kind of as we just end the episode with Osa hurtling down the side of the mountain.
pulling back the curtain somewhat, like most of the time I've got some version of a cliffhanger prepped and loaded before we start recording.
Mm-hmm.
I have, a couple things. I'm like, I might end somewhere around here. I would do something like this. That was one where I was like, guys, I don't know how to end this episode. I think it was Steve that was like, just end it with him falling. That's a great cliffhanger. And I'm like,
I love
you're
that.
right. That's a really good cliffhanger.
Minus the hanging part, just falling.
Yeah,
It was
just the cliff part.
A cliff
Jumping.
faller.
Yeah.
I think
uh,
the cliffhanger that really hit me the most this season was when we went to the arena in Ba Sing Se. Because for me in that moment, I was like, you were like, and then there are hornets, and there are these big things, and there's a dragon. And I was like,
and
is
the
he
ground's on
just,
fire.
I was like, is he just adding things in the moment to make this more terrible for us? Like, I was like, how much of this was planned? And how much of this is he just like throwing onto us just to get a reaction, Justin? What are you doing?
I actually had, so I think, and I clarified, like the Hornets and the giant Unagi and the pig is the game that they play in the arena.
Yeah.
Like that is like if you would just go there on a normal day, that's what you'd see them playing. And it would be the dumbest thing in the entire world. And the ramp up was somehow this guy has captured a dragon and has released it into the stadium.
I was like, we're all gonna die.
Yeah, I felt that way
We're
too.
not getting out of this.
Ooh, the first time we meet Boomy.
Ooh.
Like, right, he walks into the arena and and
That's
like
a fun one, yeah.
because everyone who watches Avatar knows who he becomes,
Yeah.
and now we're like, oh, and he's
That was
gonna,
the first legend that we
Mhm.
met.
Yeah. Technically, he would be a
Only-
legend.
The
Yeah.
only legend that we met.
Great point. I was going to throw that in there too because we were going into like the tea shop that became an underground fighting ring, which was hilarious because of all these like burly people running the tea shop, being all gruff. But like Justin always
had
kind of
fountains everywhere.
Justin always kind of takes like a stereotype and then twists it a bit and tries to like
I love
surprise
it.
you.
I love doing
And I
that.
just loved how you did that. And then when we're downstairs, like that moment where we know we're set up for a 1v1 and that Lico's the one going in to the tournament. I loved that. That was a great cliffhanger.
Yeah, I think my favorite is just, and I think this was mentioned in chat as well,
Mhm.
just the arm removal
That's good.
cliffhanger. Because I immediately knew that we were going to see like very visceral reactions from every single character, obviously.
Yeah.
But just like I was excited to play those out as much as I was, sad about what happened.
It did. Yeah.
As a listener, I like that one and Osa's. As a player, those were the two most stressful for me.
Yeah.
I
Very
remember
fair.
being so mad at Johnny for the Osa things, and at you, Justin, because oh my god, it was just really bad because I tried everything I could to save him, and it just wasn't good enough. And then with Liko, I didn't have any control over it, so it was very stressful for me. But as a listener, that was great storytelling.
Yeah. That's interesting because those are the ones that aren't like this crazy thing happens and we'll have to see how it resolves next week. It was like the suspense is how are you going to live with this event next episode.
Oh, that's pretty emotionally
It's different than
impactful.
Pinchy Prawns.
It's
That
a
one-
little different than Pinchy
Yeah.
Prawns.
Yeah.
They're pretty close though in terms
No,
of
I
like
mean-
emotional impact.
Yeah, I guess in a way.
My favorite was the Iron reveal. Just because I had been holding on to that one for a few episodes at that point, and I was just so excited to see how you all
I
responded.
think that was the only cliffhanger that I can remember at least that made me like want to swear at you.
I forgot about that one.
I was just gonna say, I feel like for season 2, I
Blocked
should
out
take
that
notes
trauma you
by
caused
episode and like have a 10 scale of like how mad I am at Justin
I like that.
at the end of the
Rate it
episode.
that way. That's a
I
good
like
one.
that. We should
That
pull
one I
every
dug
time.
in deep. I forgot all about that, Justin. Yeah, this is,
Yeah, because we were
Whacked it
all
out.
collectively so pissed.
You were all very angry at me. That's good. That's
Oh
good
my
stuff.
god! Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was a good one too. Chat mentioned when we find out that Naozawa's been in charge of Project Spark and the Dai Li at that point.
Oh yeah,
that was another good one. That one was even less like shot, like cliffhanger, and more just like the whole story has been building to this moment, and everything after this moment is going to be dealing with this revelation and this cliffhanger.
I feel like that one was like one of those things that kind of was just like on, like it was just another thing to add to the pile. Like it was like one of those moments where it was like, of course.
That I loved that. I mean, we should wrap up soon. Like that one for me, it's interesting you say that, because for me, like in my head, I'm like, this helps tie a bow on most of the like villain threads that we've been pulling this entire season. Like that's the moment I was like, I can stop trying to like introduce a bunch of things and start trying to like, close the loop on some of these stories.
Yeah.
Dude, I wish we could get to all these questions. Because there are just so many good ones. Man.
We just don't.
Yeah.
Hey,
I was going to say,
Well,
support us on Patreon. We want to do this regularly. We would love to do a bi-weekly Behind the Bison. It won't be all 6 of us hanging out. These are special episodes at the end of a season, but we want to do stuff like this regularly. That way we don't have to skip over your questions.
Mm-hmm.
That way we can chat with you if you want and answer any questions you have. So if have been on the fence about supporting us on Patreon, for the price of a coffee, you can help us get out more content, hang out with you, talk, and we would love your support.
Definitely want to do more of this. Also, if you can help us get to the point where we can do video streaming, that'd be awesome. Because then you can see Monroe when she's super conflicted and then does something dark as Liko. It's a great experience for me every time.
You see our reactions as well.
honestly, there are a lot of moments where we all react physically, and then someone's like, "Oh yeah, this is an audio medium." Like, why don't everybody say how you react?
I gotta say something. Oh man.
Yeah.
Danny, any last closing thoughts, closing questions?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I wish we could get to all of these ones. And I know I was just looking at this question that Mirai had asked on Discord. They asked, with the entire season under our belts, looking back, is there anything that we wish we could change about our characters? And I kind of had an answer like sewing up. The way that I play RPGs, while I'm playing, unless my character does something that really, really just doesn't land, or that I can tell like maybe offends other players. I don't think I've really gone there at all yet, maybe. Even if there's something that my character did that I really, in the moment, didn't like, I can still look back at that and say, hey, I can still build off of that. I can still find a way to tell a good story from that. There are so many moments in this season where me playing Rozak, I just was not able to get like a piece in that maybe I wanted to in that moment, but like that's okay. Like the other players were there to tell their story, and I don't know, it's just such a unique thing playing these TTRPGs, and it's kind of something that you have to like finesse and just have to. There's a lot of acceptance in that too. Like, hey, maybe like I might do something I regret, or maybe I regret not doing something, but that's okay. My character still grows as long as I'm playing them. That's it.
So the question's if there's anything we regret, but
or like would go back and change.
I think
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a couple of regrets about Osa, but like there are things that I can like. I'm not going to say what they are because there are things that can potentially become part of a growth arc instead of just something I regret. But with Shoban, I regret not making the and part of this was just because everything was kind of happening on the fly. But I kind of regret not making the delineation between Shoban and Gemi a little bit more clear and a little bit more like obvious that these are functionally two different people that just look the same.
For me, as a player, I don't really have anything that I regret, just because I feel like just about everything that Liko has done, I wouldn't say has been justified, because that would be like the wrong word, but she paid for it. You know, she committed something and then had to learn from that and now has to live with it. But as Liko, I would say her biggest regret would be the blood bending with the elderly couple. That was,
yeah.
I didn't even like that. I almost was brought to tears when I made that roll, because that was hard for me too, and I was really disappointed in Liko for doing that.
That was another one of those moments that I think we all stopped for a moment and we're like, all right, okay, yeah, let's go for it.
Let's keep going.
Yeah.
I would say that in terms of general character design, I have no regrets for Ren. I'd say that in terms of decisions, I made a poor player decision on the last episode of season 1. I could have easily pushed Ren off of his balance track earlier on by simply asking Johnny to respond to Ren in the jail cell by what is the mechanic called, Justin? It's just guide and comfort. If he guided and comforted me, he would have pushed me off the track instead of essentially me initiating a guide and comfort and then him responding. That would have given me a much better pacing for the end of the season and allowed Ren to have some better moments. But I think what instead we saw was like Ren pushed to the forgiveness extreme at the absolute worst moment when his friends needed him, and things still working out good anyway. But like, it was definitely like embarrassing. I think we'll play that out for Ren and see how Ren processes that. But it was also embarrassing for me as a player to be like, this is my grand moment. I'm going to drop my weapons and appeal to you. And 3 people will be like, yeah, we agree. We're going to leave. And I was like, this is not what I envisioned. And then Ren gets taken away in chains.
It's actually, I'm glad you brought this up, because I think I wanted to say this too a couple times now, which is that was actually a much bigger play than you think happened. Because mechanically, when you've got groups of NPCs, depending on how many of them are in the group, they're always one tier above. They're a tier above what they would normally be. That group of NPCs was the same tier as Naozao. And by having 3 people leave that group, you brought them down, which ended up being a 5 fatigue and 2 condition swing. Ooh. So like it feels not as big. I'm talking to you as a player, because I want to encourage you that wasn't as useless as you think it was. Yeah. That actually allowed Liko and Rozek and Sho to take them out much faster than they would have before.
Well, there's a silver lining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
And you paid for it, right? But that's the thing. It was a big swing. You ended up doing something that maybe didn't feel as cool. And maybe that was just it. Maybe the regret is we didn't narrate that as well. And so it felt useless. But I can remember that moment, and I remember taking away some fatigue boxes and taking away some condition boxes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm still waiting to cash in my moment of balance, so we'll see.
It'll come.
Yeah. My name is Chinao Launcher, and I have no regrets.
Yes!
Yes! Yes!
Not a one.
When I meet you in person, Nick, I need you to say that for me.
Oh, that would be so cool to play at an actual table. Oh.
Y'all, I was watching videos of Gen Con. We got to get to Gen Con next year.
Okay. My friend was there. We think he got COVID.
I have talked to many people that got COVID from Gen Con.
Gen Con was a super spreader.
It was definitely a super spreader.
Gen Con, more like Gen COVID.
Gen Convid.
Gen Con. Okay.
And on that lesser note,
we're falling off.
Yes. Thank you for coming.
Well, we just want to thank you for listening to our first season of the Flying Bison Podcast. We're not planning to end anytime soon. We are planning to have a number of more episodes. So there will be more of these Behind the Bison episodes. If we meet our Patreon goal, they'll be more regular. If not, we'll get to it at the end of the second season. And I know I am very excited for what the second season is going to bring. I have started to brainstorm some ideas, and I think we'll get some good ones out there.
I want to play so many new characters.
So, Johnny, just try and stick to one, my friend. Just try and stick to one.
Cap them at 3.
Next week we will be releasing our Brindlewood Bay, starting to release our Brindlewood Bay mini campaign. It was 4 episodes.
Yes, they're so fun.
It's the 5 of us and our new friend Nikki, and it was so much fun. It ended way better than I could have hoped, and I can't wait for you all to listen to it. I'll put a content warning at the beginning of the first episode, just due to the nature of the game. It's a little bit darker than Avatar is.
More like scary dark than anything else.
It's scary dark. It's not like gory dark or like mature, but it's very discomforting in many scenes for sure. So if you're not in that mood, maybe hold off until you're in a better mood to listen to it. And
have a cozy activity.
Have a cozy activity. In a month, we'll be back with the first episode of season 2. So after Brindlewood Bay will be season 2. I am excited. Awesome. Thank you all for playing.
Looking forward to that.
Thank you all for chatting. And thank you all for listening. And we hope that you've got a great day ahead of you. And we'll see you later. Bye.
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 Avatar Legends was developed and produced by Magpie Games. The worlds of Avatar The Last Airbender and Avatar The Legend of Korra are property of Viacom CBS. Intro music is Dizu by Sendai. Outro music is Tokyo Funk by LATG Music. Logo and art by Kate and Matthew Menke. You can find more of their work at pomakin.com, linked in the show notes.